There is nowhere on Earth like the Orkney Islands in Scotland. For thousands of years, these islands have held a secret, a testament to a civilization that flourished long before the Romans and long before the Vikings. They were the master builders of a Stone Age world. Stonehenge may have even come from here. Today, we are uncovering the incredible stories hidden in Orkney Island. The day a medieval face fell out of the floor. On the quiet Scottish island of Rousay, where the landscape is as wild as the sea and the wind could peel paint off a ship, a 900-year-old surprise was waiting to be revealed in the strangest way possible. And history was ready to smile. At Scale Farm, in the middle of an archaeological dig, university student Katie Joss was having a perfectly normal day. It was the kind of day where you're moving stones, brushing dirt, and hoping for something mildly interesting to turn up. It was about as exciting as digging in your garden. Then, out of nowhere, a carved sandstone head rolled into her hands. I mean that in the literal sense. She had her hands in the dirt, and suddenly it just sort of rolled into her palms, like a gift from Mother Earth herself. The air went suddenly still, and for a fleeting moment, Katie felt a presence watching her, a feeling she would never quite be able to shake. Katie said we were removing a slab when the head came rolling out at us. As we turned it around, we saw a face looking back at us. While the scene might sound like something out of a horror movie, the reality was far more exciting. What Katie was gifted by the universe was a fully carved, highly detailed medieval stone head. Katie found it wedged in the corner of an ancient dwelling built between two medieval structures. One of the structures was either a storehouse or an administrative HQ. Archaeologists aren't sure which, but they are leaning toward an HQ of some kind. This could mean that Scale Farm wasn't just a farm, but maybe a center of power, like a primitive palace or something. Honestly though, this is all preliminary and no one knows what's going on. They've never expected to find an actual stone head, so they're pretty shocked by the whole thing. Hair, eyebrows, and a mystery nose. The head was carved from rich red sandstone flecked with yellow. Scientists traced it geologically to the island of Iday, medieval Orkney's favorite spot for designer stone blocks. Dr. Sarah Jane Gibbon, co-director of the dig, was floored by this revelation. Over all her years of excavating sites like Scale and the Work, a medieval hall tower close by, she had found carved sandstone before, but nothing like this. The craftsmanship was sharp. The head was meant to be viewed at a slight angle, showing off perfectly sculpted locks cascading around the crown. The closed eyes without pupils gave it a meditative quality. And if you look closely, the head's lips seem to hold a faint, knowing smile, as if it has been waiting for centuries to be found. And then there are the eyebrows. They're slightly mismatched, like the artist caught the subject mid-thought, and the nose is entirely gone. Was it an accident, or did someone deliberately smash the statue's sniffer during a period of religious upheaval? That little mystery remains unsolved, but the point stands. This statue is an amazing example of expert craftsmanship, and although it isn't as ancient as many of the stone circles in the Orkney Islands, it's still almost 1,000 years old. As fascinating as the head itself was, its true story began to emerge when archaeologists found a stunning connection to a nearby cathedral. Cathedral doppelgangers and Viking neighbors. Things got even more interesting when Dr. Gibbon noticed the scale head had a twin, or at least a sibling, carved into a window frame in the south aisle of St. Magnus Cathedral in Kirkwall. That's right, there's a small stone head carved in the same style, the same size, but in reverse. But a perfect mirror image? It's a detail that has archaeologists scratching their heads, wondering if the two weren't just created by the same artist, but if they were perhaps part of a ritual, a set of keys to unlock a secret known only to the elite of medieval Orkney. Amazingly, the connection between the two heads could have something to do with the Vikings. Scale was built upon the ruins of an ancient Norse settlement from the 12th century, right on top of the former estate of Sigurd of Westness, a Viking chieftain who was friends with Earl Ragnvald, the very man who commissioned St. Magnus Cathedral. Suddenly, all the pieces started to click into place. Archaeologist Dan Lee believes that Sigurd's Great Hall was converted into the medieval farmstead where the head was found. While the head itself is much older than Sigurd or the buildings, it's clear there's a deep connection between the Norse, the Scottish farmers, and the ancient people of the Orkney Islands. Even the name scale comes from the Old Norse skali, meaning hall. Between the farm, St. Mary's Chapel, and the work tower, this wasn't just some rural outpost. It was a medieval power complex. And the head is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. The head is still an enigma. No one knows who carved it, who the face represents, or what its purpose was. But it's an incredible clue that points to a more complex story unfolding at Scale Farm. Underneath the Viking hall and the medieval farmstead is something even more ancient, likely connected to the mysterious head. Archaeologists have found other red sandstone fragments in the area, along with decorated bone pieces and traces of multiple construction phases, suggesting the site grew and evolved over centuries. The rectangular building where the head rolled into Katie's hands has foundations stretching beyond current excavation limits, possibly hiding an even bigger complex. That's kind of frustrating. They can't get to it. Dr. Gibbon plans to dive deeper into the scale head's connections with St. Magnus Cathedral and other medieval carvings. But for now, the head remains a fascinating mystery, a 1,000-year-old face smiling back at us, waiting for its full story to be revealed. Just look at that smile. A boy, a beach, and a mystery. A ship that survived wars and storms for over a century finally met its match. A kid with a sand shovel. It started with a kid sprinting along a windswept beach on Sunday. No, not Sunday, I didn't say it wrong. Sunday is one of Scotland's Orkney Islands, a tiny thing in the Inner Hebrides that is only about 20 square miles. But that is 20 square miles of magic. The kid sprinting across the beach was doing so after a brutal storm in early 2024. The boy stumbled across something sticking out of the sand. Not a bit of driftwood, not a whalebone. This was a massive chunk of oak hull. Yes, hull, as in the hull of a boat. The kid found a chunk of ship about 30 feet long and 15 feet wide, stitched together with wooden pegs like a medieval IKEA project. It sounds exciting to people like you and me, but to these folks, it was just another Sunday. These islanders know their way around shipwrecks like New Yorkers know their way around steaming street grates. Hundreds of ships have gone down in the waters around Orkney over the centuries, most often victims of North Sea tantrums. But this one looked different. It seemed older and fancier than most of the shipwrecks that show up. More intrigued than normal, the islanders took a closer look. That closer look kicked off an 18-month detective story that would uncover one of the luckiest and longest-serving ships in Royal Navy history. The HMS Hind, survivor extraordinaire. After a lot of poking and prodding, archaeologists announced the discovery of the wreck's identity. It turned out to be the HMS Hind, an absolute legend in the UK. Born in 1749 in Chichester, this 24-gun Royal Navy frigate was the Forrest Gump of the 18th century seas. Wherever history happened, she showed up with her heavy guns ready for action. She cruised off Jamaica in the 1750s. She was at the Siege of Louisbourg in 1758, and the more famous Siege of Quebec in 1759, where Britain clashed with France in the 7 Years' War. She hung around for the American Revolutionary War in the 1770s, and then she chilled in the Irish Sea for a decade as a training ship before getting sold off and reinvented as a 500-ton Arctic whaler called the Earl of Chatham. Quite the history, huh? This boat changed captains more times than you've changed Uber drivers. And then came disaster. It was during the ship's whale hunting phase that her luck finally took a day off. On April 29, 1788, a North Sea storm shoved her onto Sanday's shore. But even then, she refused to go out in tragedy. The ship was beached, and all 56 people on board survived. It was a disaster, but one that didn't involve any deaths. For the following several centuries, the ship lay in the sandy beach, slowly but surely being eroded by waves, wind, and kids building sandcastles, up until our hero Kid stumbled upon it. Identifying the wreck wasn't as straightforward as you might expect. Sure, the hull was beautifully preserved under the sand, but you can't exactly hold up a plank and go, yep, that's definitely HMS Hind. There's a lot more to it than that. Scientists took multiple wood samples for dendrochronology, a long word that describes tree ring dating. The verdict was that the oak came from southern and southwestern England, and one piece had a clear felling date of spring 1748. Dendrochronology is pretty awesome. It narrowed the suspects down significantly by revealing the exact date the trees were cut down to be used as timber for the boat. But the real breakthrough came from teamwork between the experts and the Sanday locals, who know ships the way bakers know bread. On an island with no trees, shipwreck timber has been a building material for centuries. Some islanders are living under roofs held up by old masts and deck beams that washed ashore. With their know-how, the combined team of islanders and scientists started ruling out ships. This one was too small, this one had the wrong country of origin, and this one was lost on the wrong date. Eventually, the paper trail led to HMS Hind. Between the hull, the dating, the location, it just couldn't be any other ship. So while Orkney has rocks dating back to the origin of civilization, they've also got old shipwrecks. If you've ever wanted to live somewhere with more sheep than people near ancient things, Orkney is the place to be. Preserving the past. Today, the salvaged timbers sit in a freshwater tank at the Sanday Heritage Center while experts figure out a long-term home for them. Ben Saunders of Wessex Archaeology, who led the project with Historic Environment Scotland, calls it an amazingly long-lived and lucky ship. He says the best part was the detective work, combining hard science with dusty archives, all while working with a community whose history is built from shipwrecks. And now for a quick break because it's shout-out time. I want to give a big shout-out and thank you to Marcia, Shelley, and Angus for supporting this channel. I'm so glad you're enjoying the videos, and let me know what other topics you'd like me to cover in the future. Skeletons, secrets, and stone cairns. Orkney is a land of myth and shadow, where winds whisper secrets through ancient stones and the very hills seem to hold their breath. Beneath the rolling green, something old and forgotten has just woken up. No, not a reboot of The Mummy, but that would be kind of awesome. What was found is a real, honest-to-goodness Neolithic tomb, and it's a whopping 5,000 years old. The tomb just got yanked back into the historical spotlight like a long-lost celebrity from prehistory. Make no mistake, this is the kind of tomb Indiana Jones dreams about after a few too many glasses of scotch. A tomb lost and found again. All right, guys, here's the scoop with this tomb. In 1896, when mustaches were huge and archaeology was nothing but Victorian dudes with pickaxes and disturbing worldviews, a tomb was ransacked. The tomb was in Holme, East Mainland Orkney. Nobody knows who looted the tomb, only that they left no notes or records behind. They smashed it to pieces, took any valuables, and left. The tomb was lost and forgotten about for 127 years. Then, seemingly on a whim, experts from National Museum Scotland decided they wanted to find it. They put together a dream team of scientists and got to work. On this team was Dr. Hugo Anderson Weimark and Professor Vicky Cummings. Armed with science, actual methodology, and zero intentions of stealing rocks for their garden patios, they set out to find the exact spot of this elusive ancient tomb. And amazingly, they nailed it. Despite being partially trashed over a century ago, the tomb still held secrets, including 14 human skeletons neatly arranged like they were waiting for a family portrait. Men, women, and children all buried together, some complete and others just fragmented bones. The team was hoping to test their DNA to figure out if the people buried in the tomb were an actual biological family or if this was more of a communal crypt situation. The tomb spoils. Alongside the human remains, the dig unearthed a smorgasbord of Neolithic goodies. They found ancient kitchenware pottery, lots of stone tools, and one very fancy bone pin, which was lovingly held up by Dr. Hugo like a proud parent showing off their kids' macaroni art. Quick shout out to the local volunteers from the University of Central Lancashire, who also helped sift through the dirt and rubble. One can only assume there was a lot of celebratory tea and biscuits involved. Jokes aside, the tomb itself is a true architectural marvel. What's left of it. Thanks, Victorian-era tomb-robbing jerks. It reveals a huge stone cairn with a central chamber. This chamber is surrounded by 6 smaller cells, creating a sprawling, interconnected complex rather than a single, simple room. It's the kind of place where, if this were a fantasy novel, a wizard would be buried at the bottom, clutching his magic wand. This structure, by the way, is rare, but also not that rare. There are only 12 other tombs like it found in Orkney. And while 12 is a small number, Orkney is a small place. So while it is a rare tomb, Orkney is full of world-class rare tombs. That's what's so special about this place. The ghost of Maze Hell Past. Dr. Hugo, now the Sherlock Holmes of prehistoric stone blocks, believes this tomb likely resembled the even more famous Maze Hell chambered cairn when it was built. The Maze Hell cairn is one of Orkney's crown jewels of Neolithic architecture, like the biggest and most mysterious Airbnb you could ever imagine. Back in its prime, the tomb at home would have towered over the landscape as a giant, eerie monument built for the dead, and it would have been visible for miles around. I guess nobody could use getting lost as their excuse for missing whatever crazy parties went on at this place. And now I'd like to introduce you to Anne Muir, the woman who owns the land where the tomb was discovered. She's just out here living her best farm life when suddenly she finds out her property includes a 5,000-year-old necropolis. That's the sort of news you don't get every day. Her reaction was a lot tamer than yours or mine might be. She just said, "It's quite remarkable to have it on your land." So I guess she wasn't that excited, but we are. There's still a lot of work to be done on the tomb, but that's okay. There's a lot of work to be done across Orkney Islands. This is only the latest resurrection of ancient history from beneath the fields of Orkney. What began as a Victorian blunder turned into one of the most exciting archaeological discoveries of recent years. But I still want to know more. I want to know who the 14 skeletons were. Did they die of natural causes, or was this a mass sacrifice? These are the questions that people demand answers for. Luckily, those answers might be coming sooner rather than later, because this might just be the beginning. The team believes there could be more bones, more artifacts, and more secrets still buried there. The altar stone bombshell. Well. Just when everyone thought the experts had Stonehenge figured out, saying it was built by ancient people stacking rocks like some prehistoric game of Jenga, the universe showed up with other plans. It's a twist straight from the Scottish Highlands. For years, scientists have insisted that the altar stone, the most sacred slab at the center of the monument, was dragged hundreds of miles from nearby Wales. But new evidence has turned that theory on its head. The altar stone may have actually hitched a ride all the way from the Orkney Islands in Scotland, a journey of nearly 500 miles. That's like dragging your IKEA coffee table from Montreal to New York without wheels and with instructions in Dutch. This incredible discovery has given the altar stone a whole new level of clout. The heavyweight champion of mystery rocks. Right in the middle of Stonehenge, the world's most famous stone circle / druid conspiracy factory, lies the altar stone. It's huge, it's mysterious, it's buried, and despite being dead center in this 5,000-year-old monument, no one really knows what it was used for. Human sacrifice? Astrological observations? The world's earliest brunch table? Honestly, who knows? Not the experts, because they can't stop arguing about it. For decades, archaeologists assumed that altar stone was just another member of the local bluestone crew, a gang of fine-grained sandstone slabs dragged all the way from the Preseli Hills in southwest Wales. That trip alone is a logistical nightmare, like trying to Uber a fridge across mountain goat country. But this stone doesn't seem to be connected to the bluestones. This one refused to play by the rules. It may have come from much farther afield, which makes Stonehenge just a little bit spicier than it already is. Getting scientific. Recently, researchers decided to put the altar stone under the geological microscope, but there's a little bit of a catch. You can't just stroll up to a UNESCO World Heritage Site and start chipping away at its sacred centerpiece like it's a sidewalk. Scientists had to work with tiny samples taken from Stonehenge back when Queen Victoria was still in diapers. They were given one sample from the 1840s and another from the roaring 1920s. Using mineral analysis and something called geological fingerprinting, which is basically CSI for rocks, the team cracked open the altar stone's secret identity. Inside was a chemical time capsule of minerals dating back 2 billion years, with a sprinkle of 450 million-year-old sparkle for good measure. By looking inside the stone, scientists were able to tell that it is a perfect match with the old red sandstone found in Scotland's Orcadian Basin. The Orcadian Basin happens to be a vast ancient slab of sedimentary rock that stretches from Inverness to the Orkney Islands. which means that Stonehenge's most important stone might hail from the land of puffins, Neolithic tombs, and killer sunsets. And now, the man who helped break the news is in big trouble. He is a proud Welshman named Anthony Clark, and he now has to face the ultimate archaeological betrayal. Wales was proud to be home of the altar stone, but now the roles are reversed, and Scotland is home of the altar stone. Anthony admitted to the BBC, "I don't think I'll be forgiven by people back home." Don't worry, Anthony. You're out here making history. Keep your chin up. And besides, Anthony, you know it's a big discovery when other scientists are actually gasping. Co-author Robert Ixer said, "This is a genuinely shocking result, probably while cleaning up the drool his colleagues left on the floor." Another researcher, Chris Kirkland, noted that this discovery gives us new insight into the Neolithic brain. It wasn't all pointy sticks and cave scribbles. These people must have coordinated society-wide efforts. How else could they have sourced giant-sized stones from Wales and Scotland? They clearly had goals, ambition, and possibly the world's first cross-country moving service. But this new revelation only makes matters more confusing because, how did they move it? Let's not forget the Orkney Islands are, islands. Did they ship it express? Did they put it on a boat and sail it down the coast? Moving rocks. This new revelation, however, only makes matters more confusing. How did they move it? We're talking about transporting a 6-ton boulder roughly 500 miles in 2500 BC. The people of Neolithic England had no cranes, no wheels, and no hydraulics. What they did have were ropes, logs, and a lot of determination. Experts suggest the most plausible answer is water. Much like how the Egyptians built the pyramids by floating massive blocks down the Nile River, the ancient builders likely sent the altar stone on a Neolithic transport barge down the coast from Orkney. This would have been a Herculean effort, but entirely possible for a society capable of such grand projects. But hold on, the journey wasn't over. Stonehenge is still 35 miles inland from the sea. So after their long sea voyage, the crew still had to drag the 6-ton stone through fields, forests, and God knows what else to reach Salisbury Plain. If you've ever struggled to carry a couch up 2 flights of stairs, this should make you feel better. Some guy 4,500 years ago probably cursed just as loudly while dragging this geological behemoth across England. What was it for? The game has changed. Orkney is now the likely original home of the altar stone, but some things haven't changed at all. There is still no clear consensus as to what the altar stone was used for. There's still no user manual. I guess you could say that scientists aren't as clever as they thought. Despite decades of study and a very active community of conspiracy theorists who swear that Stonehenge is an alien landing pad, no one knows the truth. All anyone knows for certain is that judging by its incredible journey and by its position at the center of the stone circle, the altar stone was extremely important. What do you think it was used for? If you have any theories, you've got to tell me about them in the comments, and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. The secret Viking highway that ran through Scotland. History just got a rewrite, a big one. For centuries, the Orkney Islands have sat quietly off the northeastern coast of Scotland, doing a solid job pretending they were just about puffins, sea cliffs, and Neolithic ruins. But under their mossy, sheep-stomped surface was yet another secret waiting, as if there haven't been enough secrets in today's video. But this one is different. It's not a tomb or a skeleton or a crumbling ruin. It's a secret that may rewrite the way experts understand Viking navigation, Norse ambition, and medieval Scottish geography. Because as it turns out, the Vikings didn't just sail around Orkney, they carved a waterway right through it. Beneath fields that have been plowed and replowed for centuries, archaeologists just uncovered a massive man-made Viking canal system that once sliced straight across Orkney's mainland island like some 9th century shipping shortcut. It connected the open ocean to Scapa Flow, the natural harbor where Norse longships once gathered like a fleet of wooden sharks. And the amazing part is that nobody knew it was there. A kingdom bought, sold, and dug into. To understand how this all happened, you need to know just how Norse Orkney really was. Because while I've been talking a lot about Stonehenge and the ancient people of Orkney, they are only part of the story. Orkney's bigger picture involves a heavy Viking presence. Starting in the late 700s, Vikings began showing up in the Orkney Islands, and instead of just burning and pillaging the place like they did in most of Europe, they stuck around. Maybe they were bored of all the killing. Maybe pillaging just wasn't giving them the gains it once did. Either way, the Vikings settled in. They built farms and named things, a lot of things. The place is still packed with Norse place names, some of which led archaeologists to find the waterway in the first place. Orkney became a full-blown Norse earldom under the rule of Scandinavian warlords who answered to the King of Norway. It stayed that way for centuries until 1468, when Christian I of Denmark ran out of cash. Whoopsie, the king was suddenly broke. Like a guy pawning his Rolex, Christian I handed over the Orkney Islands as part of his daughter's wedding dowry to James III of Scotland, just to earn a bit of dough. What I'm telling you right now is that Scotland literally bought Orkney from Norway. Scotland purchased it from the Vikings. But long before that transaction, the Vikings had already engineered Orkney into a strategic naval hub, and that included building their own inland shipping lane, almost like the Panama Canal. Not quite the same, but almost. Introducing ground-penetrating radar. With the discovery of the waterway, Orkney was swarmed by researchers from the University of the Highlands and Islands, the University of St. Andrews, and the University of Wales. It was a certifiable nerd fest. Armed with a mix of remote sensing gear and an unhealthy obsession with Old Norse place names, they started piecing together the mystery. They looked at names like Greenay, which is Old Norse for shallow waters, and they looked at the name Narston, a mashup of the Old Norse words for transport ship and farm. These are real places in Orkney, by the way, places named by the Vikings centuries ago, before they sold up the island to the Scots. Then, using geophysical mapping and sediment sampling, they traced a series of now filled-in channels running across the island, linking the Loch of Harry with Loch Saveston and Loch Boardhouse. What the scientists found wasn't just an old river or a fluke of erosion. It was an engineered trade route, purpose-built by Norse settlers to dodge the killer currents of the Pentland Firth, which is of course a sea passage known for chewing up boats and spitting out splinters. In simple terms, the Vikings saw the deadly tides and said, yeah, let's just dig through the island instead. Classic Viking behavior. If you can't beat it, fight through it. Not just plunderers. Before you start picturing Vikings in horned helmets swinging pickaxes like Minecraft players, keep in mind this was no slapdash trench. What archaeologists have found was a navigable inland passage used to haul grain, livestock, and trade goods safely through the island. Remember earlier when I said that Stonehenge's altar stone may have been shipped from Orkney to England by boat? This method of carving an inland canal may have been used to get the stone to the sea. For the Vikings, every time they put a boat full of sheep and salted fish into the Pentland Firth, they were gambling with their life and their livestock. The waterway was the insurance policy to make sure they didn't lose their cargo. It was both smart and essential. And it means that we, as in the public, need to stop thinking of the Vikings as berserker pirates on a get-rich-quick spree. They were planners, they were builders, logistics maniacs, the Amazon Prime of the North Atlantic. They were movers and shakers, and they were doing it everywhere they went. Because while this may seem like a once-in-a-blue-moon sort of discovery, there are others like it. The same kind of canal system was discovered on the Isle of Skye, at the Viking site of Ruben-Dunain on Scotland's coast. Apparently, these guys had a whole network of sea shortcuts baked into their empire, allowing them to take boats where boats wouldn't typically go. Buried by time, rebuilt by science. Thanks to some clever detective work and new tech, the team was able to remap the waterway and bring it back into the archaeological spotlight. Dr. Richard Bates from the University of St. Andrews called it amazing that so much evidence still remained. His colleague, Dr. Alexandra Sandmark from the Institute for Northern Studies, was equally thrilled. Their findings, published in the Journal of Wetland Archaeology, are already reshaping how historians think about Norse transport, trade, and infrastructure. And they're just getting started. The rediscovery of this waterway adds a very cool footnote to Viking history while also challenging the core narrative of who the Vikings were. It shows us a people who weren't just raiders, but were also rulers, architects, and economic strategists who reshaped the land to fit their needs. And then there's Orkney itself, a land so rich in history that I kind of want to get on a plane right now and go see it for myself. Who's with me? Thanks for watching. What's your favorite ancient site in the Orkney Islands? Have you been there before? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and I'll see you soon. Bye!